American Hypnosis Network.
Hi Peter, so I have a few questions for you.
Yes, thank you.
Can you tell me what hypnosis is?
Yes, hypnosis is a process where we help to relax the left brain dominant cognitive faculties and stimulate the subconscious right brain intuitive faculty. You see, normally we are very much in our left brain because the world around us demands our attention. Willpower, logic, reason, all these cognitive faculties demand a certain focus on the here and now, which is obviously a very important faculty of our mind. But there is also a vast part of our mind, the almost 90% of our mind, that is subconscious and really drives our behavior, our concepts, our conditioning because of parental influence, because of environmental conditioning, because of our upbringing, and all of these factors have contributed to a certain behavior that we are not at all conscious aware of. And hypnosis addresses these subconscious tendencies that are below subconscious and that we can't really seem to get a hold of. And it's a problem for most of us that when we want to execute certain things, we want to achieve certain dreams, we want to break certain habits, the conscious mind, we just can't deal with this vast, invisible part of our being. And so with the hypnotic techniques, we can help people get there. And the process that I generally call the hypnotic process is a guided meditation on steroids. And so the definition of meditation is making the subconscious conscious. In other words, whatever is happening deep down inside of us that lies below our conscious awareness, that vast world, that vast universe there, if we can become more consciously interactive with that subconscious part of ourselves and imagine the kind of empowerment that can take place deep within ourselves.
Is there a difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy?
Yes, well, there is a great difference between regular hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Hypnosis is mostly what people see on stages, what they see on TV, and often it is very poorly portrayed. People don't really understand very well what it is, and often it even scares people. While hypnotherapy, the word therapy, is a very different thing. It has nothing to do with stage performance. It has nothing to do with shock inductions. It is a very gentle process that is very, very therapeutic. For example, in my sessions, when you work with me, you will find that generally the first part of our session we will discuss. I will help you understand certain things. Very gently we find out what is going on and how we can strategize and use your ideas and strategize according to your needs. And we bring those needs that you have back into the subconscious with the hypnotherapy processes. Now, hypnotherapy is, like I said earlier, more like a very advanced form of guided meditation. And one of the techniques that we use, for example, is guided imagery, which what we also call therapeutic imagery. And we help you deal with the subconscious issues that are going on in a very guided, gentle way. Now, how do we do that? Which is an interesting technique, because people often do not understand the workings of the subconscious. A lot of people have all sorts of notions about what it is and perhaps what it's not.
What are some of the common fears and misconceptions people have about hypnosis?
Well, some of the most common fears and misconceptions people have about hypnosis and hypnotherapy is often caused by movies, by stage performances, that somehow I'm going to do something, I'm going to lose control, and I'm going to act out something really weird, and later on I'm going to be totally embarrassed by it, or I have amnesia, I don't remember what happened. So in other words, a loss of self-control, a loss of awareness, which is a scary proposition. And the interesting thing is that the opposite is what happens. You're actually gaining an expansion of your awareness. There is not at all a loss of control. And like I said earlier, what we really do is expanding and getting access to your subconscious, but not at the expense of your subconscious. Not at the expense of your conscious, sorry. So there is not at all any loss. What we do is we kind of help this dominant part of our brain, our left brain, to relax. Now relax doesn't mean it's not working. It's not dominating. You see, you can say, well, I need to be in my left brain all the time. This is my cognitive faculty. But is it not true that we are much more than that? We have a much deeper intuitive understanding that because we are so into our left brain, we almost seem to neglect that little voice inside of us that sometimes speaks, you should do this, why don't you think about it this way. Creativity, genius, all come from this intuitive knowing deep down inside of us. It's also in that deeper inside of us where all our habits are. The subconscious is what we sometimes call a habit machine that just keeps repeating certain processes over and over again, and we just can't seem to break those habits. Although consciously I may know, for example, that I don't want to smoke, I don't want to drink, I don't want to keep eating, but yet I don't seem to be able, even while I take the cigarette and I know I shouldn't, I'm still doing it. How come? I'm cognitively aware that I shouldn't be doing this, yet I keep doing it. So that vast subconscious is what seems to be just perpetuating certain habits that are ingrained due to continuous repetition and parental influence, environmental conditioning. And in order to break that, we need to have a communication with that subconscious part of our mind. Now, who says that working with the subconscious, we need to lose consciousness? That will be a kind of a confinement, a restriction of your conscious awareness. But what we do is, we actually invite the subconscious to also present itself along with your cognitive faculties. But in order not to allow the cognitive faculties to dominate, we ask it to just kind of rest. Not be unaware, rest. So that my other deeper side can also have a voice. But the way the subconscious speaks is different from the conscious cognitive mind. The cognitive mind has logic, reason, decision making, willpower, where we execute desires. And the subconscious is an emotional child. It feels, it needs to be safe, it needs to survive. And so it also thinks in metaphors. It understands X is larger than Y, this is safe, this feels good, here I can, feel and continue to be safe in future. And so the emotional child doesn't reason as much as the conscious mind, rather it thinks in metaphors in terms of its survival and its safety. So when we can make that part of our mind more aware and have a communicative process established with that mind, then we can greatly empower ourselves. We can ask this child, listen, do you think that this particular behavior is really good for you? See, the reason why the child holds on to a behavior is not because it has any ill will, though consciously we may say this particular desire is not, this particular behavior is not desirable, but often the child hangs on to a behavior because it doesn't see another option, you see? So what we do, we're not going to just talk to this child all over and psychoanalyzing this reason why the child is holding on to this behavior. What we're going to do is acknowledge the fact that the child doesn't see another option because it has been conditioned to believe this is the only solution. So what we do, we introduce a new, more constructive way. And the child, strangely enough, will resort to this behavior very rapidly. Why? Because its one and only priority is to feel safe. It needs to survive. And therefore, very rapidly, once you reintroduce or you introduce a new learning to the subconscious mind, the child takes to it very, very rapidly. It's amazing. This is the magic of hypnotic processes.
What are some of the most common issues you help people with?
Well, some of the most common issues people come to me for is, of course, smoking, right? A lot of people have heard and they know that the hypnotic process works like a charm when it comes to smoking. And generally I have a 3-session program for smoking cessation, where the client actually quits smoking in one single session, and then the second session we teach them coping techniques, and the third session we do reinforcement, which are very much necessary to bring this process to conclusion. The success rate is staggering. Now, other issues are weight loss, pain management, and we have, of course, a lot of anxiety. And believe it or not, one of the great powers of hypnotherapy is that we can help people attract all the good in the world that they need. For example, the power of attraction, things like affluence, but affluence is not necessarily expressed only in terms of money, but we can do that as well, but also love, relationships, well-being, health. And so we help the subconscious mind become attuned to those frequencies of that prosperity that are everywhere around us, like a radio tuner. A great saint has said, the wind of grace is always blowing, but you have to raise your sails. In other words, whatever we want is already out there. And for some reason, our internal beacon is not attuned to this cosmic beacon, and these two need to be attuned. So what we do, we help people realign their internal subconscious programming to the prosperity consciousness. And this is actually, I have a lot of clients that have this need, and we all do in some way, and we can really help people to enhance their sense of well-being. Now there's of course a lot of issues we work with, things like nail biting, specific physical issues, and the techniques that we use are both as primary caregiver but also in order to assist people. So when somebody comes for smoking, they come just for smoking. But if somebody is a cancer survivor or goes through chemo, we are assisting. So we are not treating cancer, we are not treating psychological disorders. But when somebody has a definable illness, a psychological disorder, you generally work with a psychotherapist, but we then assist. We help in a team to, add different faculties and features to this sense of healing. So it really depends what you come for. Certain things we are the primary caregiver, certain things, often more chronic things, we are the secondary assistance to that healing when you work along with your doctor or your naturopath or your dietitian and things like that.
Do you have any particular specialities?
Yes, I do have certain specialties. My specialty is therapeutic imagery, and therapeutic imagery is basically, it could be regarded as a standalone technique where through guided imagery, which is more that meditative process, we help you to achieve, to understand, to release. But therapeutic imagery, guided imagery with hypnosis is much more powerful, much more quick, much more effective. So I've kind of specialized in bringing these two techniques together, and a lot of my work, a lot of the techniques I use are based on therapeutic imagery processes. As a matter of fact, it's very hard to take hypnosis away from guided imagery because a lot of the hypnotic processes are imagery based. But there's a lot of like Ericksonian style of hypnosis where we much more talk to people. It's much more just giving certain commands, good orders. reframing of things, which is also a part of hypnosis and is of course techniques that I also use. But I prefer, and in most cases I find it to be more effective, to work with images. Because remember, as we grow up as a child, we get bombarded with impressions, circumstances, people, things, situations, incoming information. And what we do as a child, we associate certain values, certain emotions to those incoming images, to those impressions. And the child, it being a small, emotional child, attaches certain values to these impressions. And these values, those fears, those ideas, those misconceptions, those limiting beliefs, are those of a child. And this can later on start causing problems within ourselves. And though consciously we evolve, we grow, the inner subconscious child still sometimes holds on to these limiting beliefs. And so the therapeutic imagery process, it investigates the relationship between those images and experiences we have gathered in our childhood and the emotional value the child has applied to those particular situations. And we can therefore have a conversation with that child in the subconscious metaphorical sense and teach it alternatives. We can help it reinterpret what value, what meaning it has given to certain things. To give you an example, to a non-smoker, a cigarette is just a piece of tobacco and some paper. To a smoker, there is an entire story. There is a friendship. There is a group spirit. There is a belonging. There is an identity issue. There is an attachment attached to this object. So we can help to disconnect and reframe the emotional value to that piece of tobacco. And when you present to this inner child this alternative, very rapidly healing, change behavior can take place. And so this process is extremely, extremely powerful. Now, my other specialization, and this is a complete different category of people that come to me, is past life regression and life between life regression. And this is based on a premise that we have lived many lives before. Now, whether you believe in that or not, it is a very personal matter, but from a therapeutic standpoint, even if you don't believe in it, the benefits are tremendous, because you could say, well, everything you're coming up with is just your own subconscious projections. Now, what if that would be true? It is still great therapeutic material. Now, for those of us that do believe there are past lives, it stands to reason then, and that we come into this earth, into this birth, with an enormous baggage of past impressions. And past life regression kind of helps us make us understand why I am the person I am now. Modern psychology will tell us that I am the product of environmental conditioning, hereditary transmission, and parental influence. Past life regression asks the question, how come I am born with these parents in this environment with this genetic coding? So it goes to investigate this causal relationship, and as a result it can be an extremely therapeutic process. Past life regression takes this process to a whole new level, where we then start to have a conversation with that soul that moves through all these lives and also now is embodied in this set of circumstances in this life. And we can basically help somebody to be deconditioned from all these lives for just a moment, from this life for a moment, and start to really tune in back to who I am. And also it is very detached, the soul, at that moment, and we can ask questions to that soul. Why are you here? Why are you born? Why do you take this birth with these circumstances? What is your higher purpose? And we find in that state, which is a very deep theta state, clients will have a perfect way of answering all these questions that in their normal, limited beta conscious state, they're incapable of answering. So these specialties I have developed, I do this a lot, And so I have really two categories of clients. One that comes from specific issues, other come for more existential questions.
How can we learn more about hypnotherapy?